The dust devils swirled across the barren land like restless spirits, and Emma Owens stood on the porch of her weathered ranch house, watching them dance with the same hollow feeling that had lived in her chest for the past 3 years. It was 1882, and the New Mexico territory stretched endlessly before her, beautiful and brutal in equal measure, just outside of Roswell, where the Pecos River cut through the unforgiving landscape. She was 26 years old, and some days she felt ancient. The ranch had been her father's dream, then her husband's pride, and now it was her burden. William had died of pneumonia during the harsh winter of 1879, leaving her with 200 acres of scrubland, 30 head of cattle, and a loneliness so profound it sometimes stole her breath. Her father had passed 2 years before William, his heart simply giving out one morning while he saddled his horse. The double loss had carved something out of her that she feared would never grow back. Emma wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders, though the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly. The gesture was habit more than necessity, a way to hold herself together when everything felt like it was falling apart. The ranch was dying slowly, just like her hope. She did not have the money to hire proper help, and the work was more than one woman could manage alone. The cattle wandered too far, the fences sagged, and the well pump needed repairs she could not afford. She had tried. God knew she had tried. Every morning she woke before dawn and worked until her hands bled and her back screamed. Every evening she fell into bed too exhausted to even cry, though the tears lived just behind her eyes, waiting. The neighboring ranchers had offered to buy her out, their voices dripping with a pity that made her want to scream. She knew what they really meant. They saw a widow, alone and failing, ripe for taking advantage of. The offers were insultingly low, barely enough to buy passage back east and start over with nothing. But Emma was not ready to give up, not yet. This land held every memory she had of the people she loved. Her father's laugh when he first saw the property. William's kiss on their wedding day, right there under the cottonwood tree by the creek. Giving up the ranch meant giving up those ghosts, and they were all she had left. The sound of hoofbeats pulled her from her thoughts. Emma shaded her eyes and watched a rider approach from the east, moving at an easy pace that suggested he was in no particular hurry. Strangers were not uncommon, Roswell being a way station of sorts for cowboys driving cattle north or drifters looking for work. But something about this rider made her straighten her spine and smooth her dust-covered skirt. He was tall in the saddle, she could see that even from a distance, and he sat his horse with the natural grace of someone born to it. As he drew closer, Emma could make out more details. He wore a brown hat pulled low against the sun, a dark vest over a blue shirt, and he rode a beautiful paint horse that looked well cared for and strong. His face was shadowed, but she could see the strong line of his jaw and the set of his shoulders that spoke of capability. The rider slowed as he approached the house, and Emma found herself holding her breath. She should probably go inside, propriety and safety both dictated it, but her feet stayed rooted to the porch. There was something about this man, even from this distance, that did not feel dangerous. Or maybe she had just been alone so long that she was willing to risk danger for the simple pleasure of a human voice. "Afternoon, madam," the rider called out, stopping his horse a respectful distance from the porch. He touched the brim of his hat, and Emma finally got a clear look at his face. He was younger than she expected, probably no more than 28 or 30, with tanned skin and eyes the color of creek water, that peculiar mix of blue and green and gray. A few days' worth of stubble shadowed his jaw, and there was a thin scar above his left eyebrow that suggested a hard life honestly lived. "Afternoon," Emma replied, surprised at how rusty her voice sounded. How long had it been since she had spoken to another soul? 3 days. 4. Name's Cole Crawford, madam. I'm looking for work, and I heard in town that you might have some need of a hired hand. His voice was low and steady, with a slight Texas drawl that made the words flow like honey. Emma blinked. You heard wrong. I cannot afford to hire anyone. Cole Crawford nodded slowly, as if he had expected that answer. Figured as much, truth be told, but I was thinking we might work out a different arrangement. I need a place to stay for a spell, somewhere quiet where I can work with my hands and clear my head. You need help keeping this place running. I will work for room and board, nothing more. When I am ready to move on, I will go with no hard feelings. It was too good to be true, and Emma's first instinct was to refuse. Nothing came free in this world. Every man wanted something, and she had learned the hard way that kindness often wore a mask. But even as the refusal formed on her lips, she looked past Cole at the sagging fence line, the overgrown corral, the barn door hanging crooked on its hinges. She looked at the dust devils still spinning in the distance and felt the weight of her loneliness like a stone in her chest. Why, she asked finally, why would you work for just food and a roof? You could get paid anywhere. Cole shifted in his saddle, and for the first time she saw something flicker across his face, something that looked like pain quickly hidden. Let us just say I have my reasons, madam. Sometimes a man needs to work without the weight of money hanging over him. Sometimes he just needs to be useful without strings attached. Emma studied him for a long moment, weighing her desperation against her caution. He did not look like a drifter or a criminal. His clothes were worn but clean, his horse was well tended, and his eyes, when they met hers, were clear and honest, or at least they seemed that way. She was probably a fool for even considering it. The bunkhouse needs repairs, she said slowly. Roof leaks and the stove is broken. I can fix that. Food is plain, beans and cornbread mostly, sometimes meat if I manage to bring down a rabbit. I am not picky. And if you try anything at all, I have my father's shotgun and I know how to use it. Cole's mouth twitched, not quite a smile but close. Understood, madam. You will have no trouble from me. You have my word. Emma took a deep breath, feeling like she was standing on the edge of a cliff about to jump. All right then. You can stay, but I want it clear that this is a working arrangement, nothing more. You keep to the bunkhouse, I keep to the house. We work during the day, we stay separate at night. Yes, madam, that suits me just fine. And stop calling me madam, makes me feel like somebody's grandmother. Name's Emma. Emma Owens. This time Cole did smile, and it transformed his face, making him look younger and somehow more real. Pleased to meet you, Emma. Thank you for the chance. He dismounted in one fluid motion and led his horse toward the barn. Emma watched him go, her heart beating strangely fast in her chest. She told herself it was just the surprise of it, the sudden change in her solitary routine. It had nothing to do with the way he sat his horse or the sound of her name in his mouth. Nothing at all. That first evening was awkward in a way Emma had not anticipated. She made supper, the same beans and cornbread she had promised, and debated whether to call Cole to the house or take his portion out to him. In the end, propriety won out, and she stood on the porch ringing the old bell that used to call the ranch hands in when her father had them. Cole emerged from the barn where he had been settling his horse, his hat in his hands and his hair slightly mussed. He had washed up, she noticed, his face clean and his shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms tanned dark by the sun. He walked to the porch with that same easy grace, and Emma found herself clutching the doorframe a little too tightly. "Supper's ready," she said, her voice coming out more abrupt than she intended. "You can eat at the table in the kitchen." "I do not want to intrude, Emma." I can take my meal outside if you would prefer. Do not be ridiculous. It is not a fancy meal, but you will eat it at a proper table like a civilized person. She turned and went inside before he could argue, and after a moment, she heard his boots on the porch boards, then the squeak of the screen door. The kitchen was small and cramped, the table barely big enough for two, and Emma was suddenly aware of how intimate it felt, sharing this space with a stranger. They ate in silence for a while, the only sounds the scrape of spoons against bowls and the ticking of the old clock on the wall. Emma snuck glances at Cole when she thought he was not looking, trying to figure him out. He ate steadily but not greedily, his manners rough but present. He kept his eyes mostly on his food, but she caught him looking around the kitchen, taking in the details. The curtains she had sewn herself. The photograph of her father on the shelf. The empty peg where William's hat used to hang. "This is good," Cole said finally, breaking the silence. "Best meal I have had in a while." Emma nearly laughed at that, bitter and tired. "It is just beans." Sometimes the simplest things are the best things. She did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing. They finished eating and Emma started to clear the dishes, but Cole stood and took his bowl to the basin before she could. "I will help with cleanup," he said. "That is not necessary." "Maybe not, but I will help anyway. My mama raised me to clean up after myself." It was strange, working side by side with him in the small kitchen. Emma washed and Cole dried, and the silence between them shifted from awkward to something almost comfortable. She found herself wondering about him, about his story. What had brought him to her door? What was he running from or searching for? The questions crowded her tongue, but she swallowed them down. If Cole wanted to share his history, he would. If not, well, it was none of her business anyway. When the dishes were done, Cole retrieved his hat from the peg by the door. "Thank you for the meal, Emma. I will start on the fence line first thing in the morning." "All right, and Cole," he paused, looking back at her. "Thank you for staying, for helping." His expression softened. "You do not need to thank me. I am the one who should be grateful." He left then, the screen door closing softly behind him, and Emma was alone again in her small kitchen. But for the first time in 3 years, the loneliness did not feel quite so heavy. There was another living soul on her property, another heartbeat in the darkness. It was a small thing, maybe, but it felt like something. The days that followed fell into a rhythm that surprised Emma with its ease. Cole was up before dawn every morning, and by the time she emerged from the house, he had already started on whatever task he had set for himself. He fixed the fence line first, spending long days in the brutal sun digging new post holes and stringing wire. Emma brought him water and occasionally food, and they would stand in the shade of whatever scrubby tree they could find, not talking much but somehow communicating anyway. She learned about him in pieces, small details that emerged like fragments of a photograph. He was from Texas originally, born and raised on a ranch outside of San Antonio. His father had died when Cole was 16, and he had spent the next decade working cattle drives and ranches all across the territory. He had been married once briefly, but his wife had died giving birth to their first child. The baby had died too, a little girl who never took her first breath. When Cole told her this, standing by the half-finished fence with his hat in his hands and his eyes fixed on the horizon, Emma felt something crack open in her chest. She understood then why he had come to her door asking for work without pay. Some griefs were too heavy to carry while worrying about money. Some wounds needed the simplicity of physical labor to heal if healing was even possible. "I am sorry," she said softly. "About your wife and daughter. That is a terrible thing to bear." Cole nodded slowly. "It was 4 years ago now. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like it happened to a different person entirely. I spent a long time being angry at God and the world and myself. Drank too much, fought too much, drifted too much. Finally decided I needed to stop running and just be still for a while. When I heard about a widow rancher needing help, it seemed like maybe it was meant to be. Two people who understand loss, working side by side to keep something alive. Emma felt tears prick her eyes, the first real tears she had shed in months. "Yes," she whispered. "That is exactly what it is." They stood there together, two wounded souls under the merciless New Mexico sun, and something passed between them, an understanding that went deeper than words. From that day forward, things were different between them. The walls they had carefully constructed, the distance they had maintained, began to crumble in small but significant ways. Emma started inviting Cole to stay after supper, and they would sit on the porch in the cooling evening air, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. They talked about everything and nothing, sharing stories from their pasts, their hopes and their fears. Cole had a dry sense of humor that caught Emma off guard, making her laugh in a way she had forgotten she could. She discovered she liked the sound of his voice, the way he pronounced certain words, the thoughtful pauses he took before answering a difficult question. One evening, about 3 weeks after Cole arrived, Emma was attempting to repair a saddle on the porch when the leather strap she was working with snapped, sending her sprawling backward. Cole, who had been working on the porch railing, caught her before she hit the ground, his strong hands gripping her arms and steadying her against his chest. "Careful there," he said, his voice low and close to her ear. Emma froze, suddenly aware of how close they were, how solid he felt behind her, how her heart was racing for reasons that had nothing to do with her near fall. She could feel the warmth of him through her dress, could smell the scent of leather and soap and something distinctly masculine. It had been so long since she had been touched by anyone, so long since she had felt the strength of a man's hands, and the sensation was overwhelming. "I am all right," she managed to say, even though her voice shook slightly. "Thank you." Cole released her immediately, stepping back to give her space, but not before she saw something flicker in his eyes, something that looked like longing quickly masked. Emma busied herself with gathering up the broken saddle, her hands trembling slightly, her mind racing. This was dangerous territory, these feelings that were starting to grow between them. She had told herself this was just a working arrangement, that Cole would move on eventually, that getting attached was foolish and would only lead to more heartbreak. But her heart, it seemed, was not listening to reason. The summer heat intensified as July gave way to August, and the work on the ranch continued. Cole fixed the barn door and patched the roof, repaired the well pump and reinforced the corral. He worked with a quiet determination that Emma admired, never complaining, never asking for anything beyond what she had promised. The ranch, slowly but surely, was beginning to look alive again. Emma found herself watching him more than she should, studying the way he moved, the concentration on his face when he worked, the gentleness he showed when handling the animals. He was good with the cattle, patient and calm, and the skittish horses that had given Emma nothing but trouble seemed to settle under his hands. There was something inherently decent about Cole Crawford, something trustworthy and solid that made Emma feel safe in a way she had not felt since William died. One afternoon, Emma was in the vegetable garden behind the house, fighting a losing battle with the weeds that threatened to overtake her meager crop of beans and squash. The sun was directly overhead, beating down with punishing intensity, and she had foolishly forgotten her hat. Her head was beginning to ache, and her vision was starting to blur at the edges, but she kept working, determined to finish the row she had started. "Emma, you need to get out of this sun." She looked up to find Cole standing at the edge of the garden, his face creased with concern. When had he walked up? She had not heard him approach. "I am fine," she said, but even as the words left her mouth, the world tilted sideways. Cole was there in an instant, catching her before she fell, scooping her up in his arms like she weighed nothing at all. Emma wanted to protest, to insist she could walk on her own, but the words would not come. Her head was spinning, and the sun spots dancing in her vision were getting worse. She let her head rest against Cole's shoulder as he carried her toward the house, and she could feel the strong, steady beat of his heart beneath her cheek. He took her inside, out of the brutal heat, and settled her gently on the sofa in the small sitting room. He brought her water, cool and sweet from the well, and made her drink slowly while he pressed a damp cloth to her forehead. His hands were gentle but sure, and Emma found herself relaxing under his ministrations, the pounding in her head slowly subsiding. "You have to be more careful," Cole said, his voice rough with emotion. "Heat stroke can kill you out here. You cannot just push yourself until you drop." "I have work to do," Emma protested weakly. "The garden will not weed itself. The garden can wait." "You are no good to anyone if you work yourself to death." He sat back on his heels, looking at her with an expression that made her breath catch. "You do not have to do everything alone anymore, Emma. I am here. Let me help you." The words hit her with unexpected force. "Let me help you." When was the last time someone had said that to her? When was the last time someone had cared whether she pushed herself too hard or forgot to eat or worked until her hands bled? The tears came then, hot and fast, spilling down her cheeks before she could stop them. "I am sorry," she choked out, covering her face with her hands. "I am sorry. I do not know why I am crying." "Yes, you do," Cole said gently. He took her hands and pulled them away from her face, holding them in his own calloused palms. "You have been carrying everything alone for too long. You have been trying to be strong every single day with no one to lean on. That is enough to break anyone." "I cannot break," Emma whispered. "If I break, I will lose everything." "You are not going to break, and you are not going to lose everything. I am here now, Emma. And I am not going anywhere unless you tell me to go." Something in his voice, in the intensity of his gaze, made Emma look up at him through her tears. What she saw in his face took her breath away. This was not just kindness or pity or duty. This was something deeper, something that scared and thrilled her in equal measure. Cole Crawford cared about her, truly cared, and the realization was both terrifying and wonderful. "Cole," she breathed, not sure what she wanted to say, what she was even asking for. He reached up and gently wiped the tears from her cheeks with his thumbs, his touch so tender it made her heart ache. "Rest now. I will take care of the garden and everything else. Just rest." Emma nodded, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. Cole stood and started to leave, but she caught his hand, holding him back. "Thank you," she said, "for everything, for being here, for caring." He squeezed her hand gently. "Always." After that day, something shifted between them again, another wall crumbling, another barrier falling away. They grew more comfortable with each other, more natural. Cole started anticipating her needs before she voiced them, appearing with water when she had been working too long in the sun, helping with the cooking when she was too tired to manage alone. Emma found herself doing the same, mending his shirts without being asked, making his favorite biscuits, learning the small details that mattered to him. They still maintained separate sleeping quarters, still kept to the basic proprieties, but the emotional distance between them had disappeared entirely. They talked late into the evenings, sharing their hopes and dreams, their regrets and fears. Emma told Cole about her childhood, about her father's determination to make something of himself in this harsh land. about William and their brief but happy marriage. Cole shared more about his own past, about the ranch he had grown up on, about his mother who had died when he was young, about the wife and daughter he had lost, and the grief that had nearly destroyed him. "You think we ever really get over losing the people we love?" Emma asked one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Cole was quiet for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "No," he said finally. "I do not think we get over it, but I think we can learn to carry it differently. Instead of it being a weight that drags us down, it becomes part of who we are. The love does not die just because the person is gone. It stays with us, changes us, makes us capable of loving again if we let it." Emma looked at him, her heart beating fast. "Do you think you could love again, Cole? After everything you have lost?" He turned to meet her gaze, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. "Yes," he said softly. "I think I could. I think maybe I already am." The air between them seemed to crackle with tension, with possibility. Emma knew in that moment that they were standing on the edge of something momentous, something that would change everything. She could pull back, could pretend she had not heard the meaning behind his words, could keep things safe and distant, or she could be brave. She could reach for what she wanted, what she needed, even knowing she might get hurt again. She reached out and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "I think maybe I am too," she whispered. Cole's breath hitched, and he squeezed her hand gently. "Emma, I do not want to presume anything. I do not want to push you into something you are not ready for. But I need you to know that these past months, working beside you, getting to know you, it has meant everything to me. You have given me a reason to hope again, a reason to believe that maybe life has more to offer than just pain and loss." "You have done the same for me," Emma said, her voice thick with emotion. "I was drowning, Cole. I was losing hope, losing the will to keep fighting. And then you appeared, and everything changed. You made me remember what it feels like to not be alone, to have someone care, to laugh and talk and just be. I do not know what the future holds, but I know I do not want you to leave. I want you to stay, not just as a hired hand, but as something more." "What kind of more?" Cole asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "The kind of more where we build a life together, where this ranch belongs to both of us, where we face whatever comes next side by side. The kind of more where I can call you mine and you can call me yours." For a moment, Cole just stared at her, his eyes wide with something that looked like wonder. Then he smiled, that rare, beautiful smile that transformed his whole face. "I would like that," he said. "I would like that more than anything in this world." He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently, and the simple gesture sent warmth flooding through Emma's entire body. This was real. This was happening. After all the loss and loneliness, after all the years of barely surviving, she was allowing herself to love again. And the terrifying, wonderful truth was that it felt right. It felt like coming home. They sat there together as the sun dipped below the horizon, and the stars began to emerge, hands clasped, shoulders touching, two wounded souls finding healing in each other. Emma rested her head against Cole's shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. For the first time in 3 years, she felt completely at peace. The next morning dawned bright and clear, and Emma woke with a lightness in her chest she had almost forgotten was possible. She dressed quickly and headed to the kitchen to start breakfast, and she found herself humming as she worked, an old song her mother used to sing. When Cole appeared at the door, his hat in his hands and that soft look in his eyes, she smiled at him with no reservation, no walls, just pure happiness. "Morning," she said, feeling suddenly shy despite everything they had said to each other the night before. "Morning," Cole replied, and there was something in his voice, a warmth and affection that made her heart skip. He crossed the kitchen in a few long strides, and before Emma could even think to be nervous, he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. It was gentle and sweet, a question and an answer all at once. Emma melted into it, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, feeling his heart pounding beneath her palms. The kiss was everything she had not let herself hope for, tender and passionate and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I have been wanting to do that for weeks," he admitted, his voice rough. "I have been wanting you to," Emma replied, and they both laughed, the sound bright and free in the small kitchen. They ate breakfast together, but the meal was punctuated by long looks and soft touches, hands brushing as they reached for the same dish, knees bumping under the table. Emma felt like a girl again, young and hopeful and full of possibility. The grief and loss were still there, still part of who she was, but they no longer defined her entire existence. She could be happy again. She could love again. She was allowed that. In the days that followed, Emma and Cole grew even closer, their relationship deepening and solidifying. They still worked hard on the ranch, the physical labor demanding and endless. But now they worked as true partners, making decisions together, planning for the future together. Cole started talking about expanding the herd, about planting more crops, about building up the ranch into something prosperous and lasting. Emma listened to his ideas with growing excitement, adding her own thoughts, and together they began to dream of what could be. One evening in late September, as the summer heat finally began to break and the first hints of autumn touched the air, Cole asked Emma to take a walk with him. They strolled down to the creek that ran through the property, the same creek where Emma's father had first envisioned the ranch, where she and William had been married under the cottonwood tree. The water burbled over the rocks, and the tree's leaves rustled in the breeze, and Emma felt the presence of her ghosts, but they did not hurt the way they used to. They felt like blessings now, like foundations she could build on. Cole stopped under the cottonwood tree and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. His expression was serious, almost nervous, and Emma felt her heart start to race. "Emma," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion she could see in his eyes. "These past months with you have been the best of my life. You have given me hope and purpose and a reason to believe in tomorrow. I know we have both lost people we loved, and I know we will always carry those losses with us, but I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to build this ranch together, raise a family together, grow old together. I want to be your husband if you will have me." Emma felt tears spring to her eyes, but they were happy tears, joyful tears. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking on the word. "Yes, Cole, I will marry you. I want all of those things too." Cole's face broke into a huge smile, and he swept her up in his arms, spinning her around as she laughed. When he set her down, he kissed her deeply, pouring all his love and hope and promise into the gesture. Emma kissed him back with equal fervor, her arms wrapped tightly around his neck, never wanting to let go. They were married 3 weeks later in Roswell, in a simple ceremony at the small church with a handful of townspeople as witnesses. Emma wore a dress she had sewn herself from blue calico, and Cole wore his best shirt and vest, his hair neatly combed and his boots polished. The preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and when Cole kissed her, sealing their vows, Emma felt a completeness she had not known she was missing. They spent their wedding night in the ranch house that was now truly theirs, together. Cole carried Emma over the threshold with a reverence that made her heart swell, and they came together in the bedroom with a tenderness and passion that spoke of both their love and their shared understanding of loss. They made love slowly, learning each other, healing each other, and afterward, Emma lay in Cole's arms, her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you so much, Cole Crawford." "I love you too, Emma Crawford," he replied, and the sound of her new name made her smile. "I will love you for all my days." The months that followed were the happiest Emma had ever known. She and Cole worked the ranch together, and under their combined efforts it began to truly thrive. They expanded the herd, improved the infrastructure, and even hired a couple of hands to help with the heavy work. The ranch that had been dying under Emma's solitary efforts now flourished with two people pouring their energy and love into it. Winter came and went, cold and harsh but bearable because they had each other to keep warm. Cole proved to be everything a husband should be, supportive and loving, hard-working and kind. He never made Emma feel less than his equal, always seeking her opinion, always respecting her knowledge and experience. They argued sometimes, as all couples do, but they always worked through it, talking until they understood each other, never letting anger fester. In the spring of 1883, Emma realized she was pregnant. She told Cole one evening after supper, nervous and excited in equal measure. They had not talked much about children, the subject too painful given Cole's history, but Emma had hoped secretly that they might be blessed with a family. When she told him, Cole's face went through a series of emotions so quickly Emma could barely track them all. Shock, fear, joy, worry, and finally, settling on a fierce, protective love that took her breath away. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. "As sure as I can be. I have all the signs. Cole, I know this is frightening given what happened with your first wife, but I need you to know I want this. I want to have your baby. I want us to be a family." Cole pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly it almost hurt. "I am scared," he admitted, his face buried in her hair. "I am terrified of losing you, of going through that again. But I also want this more than I can say. I want to see you round with my child. I want to hold our baby in my arms. I want all of it, Emma, even though the fear is eating me alive." "We will face the fear together," Emma said, pulling back to look him in the eyes. "We will get through this together, whatever happens. But Cole, I have to believe it is going to be all right. I have to believe that we have earned some happiness, some good fortune. We have both suffered enough." "It is our turn for joy." Cole nodded, and she could see him visibly choosing hope over fear, love over worry. "You are right. We will get through this together. And I am going to take care of you every single day, make sure you and the baby have everything you need." He was true to his word. As Emma's pregnancy progressed, Cole became almost comically protective, insisting she rest more, refusing to let her do any heavy lifting, bringing her whatever she needed before she even asked for it. It would have been suffocating if it had not been so obviously born of love and care. Emma found it endearing, even when it drove her a little crazy. The pregnancy was not easy. Emma suffered from morning sickness that lasted well into the afternoon, and as the summer heat intensified, she felt swollen and uncomfortable. But through it all, Cole was there, rubbing her feet when they ached, holding her hair when she was sick, reading to her in the evenings when she was too tired to do anything but rest. In October of 1883, Emma went into labor. It was long and difficult, and there were moments when Emma thought she might not make it, when the pain was so intense she could not imagine surviving it. But Cole never left her side, holding her hand, wiping her brow, whispering words of encouragement and love. The midwife from town, a stern but capable woman named Mrs. Henderson, worked efficiently, and finally, after what felt like an eternity, Emma heard the most beautiful sound in the world, a baby's cry. "It is a boy," Mrs. Henderson announced, placing the squalling infant on Emma's chest. A big, healthy boy. Emma looked down at her son, this tiny, perfect creature, and felt a love so overwhelming it brought fresh tears to her eyes. He had a shock of dark hair and he was red-faced and angry at being thrust into the cold world, but he was beautiful. He was perfect. He was theirs. She looked up at Cole and found him staring at the baby with an expression of such awe and wonder that it made her heart ache. Tears were streaming down his face, and he reached out with a shaking hand to touch their son's tiny fist. "He is perfect," Cole breathed. "Emma, he is absolutely perfect." "Do you want to hold him?" Emma asked, and Cole nodded, seemingly unable to speak. Mrs. Henderson cleaned the baby quickly and wrapped him in a soft blanket, then placed him carefully in Cole's arms. Cole cradled his son with infinite gentleness, staring down at him like he was seeing a miracle. And he was, Emma thought. They both were. After all the loss and pain, after all the years of loneliness and grief, they had created new life. They had brought hope and joy into the world. "What should we name him?" Emma asked softly. Cole thought for a moment, his eyes never leaving the baby's face. "What about James? After your father?" Emma felt fresh tears spring to her eyes. Her father, James Owens, who had built this ranch from nothing, who had loved her unconditionally, who had died too soon. "James," she repeated. "James Crawford. It is perfect, Cole. Thank you." They sat together, the three of them, a new family forged from loss and healing and love. Mrs. Henderson finished her work and left them with instructions and promises to check in the next day. Cole carefully climbed onto the bed next to Emma, still holding baby James, and Emma leaned against her husband's shoulder, gazing down at their son. "I cannot believe he is real," Cole said quietly. "I cannot believe we get to have this." "We get to have this," Emma confirmed. "We get to have everything, Cole. The ranch, each other now, James. We have built something beautiful here." "We have," Cole agreed. He looked at her with so much love in his eyes that Emma felt her breath catch. "I never thought I would be this happy again, Emma. I never thought I deserved it. But somehow, impossibly, you came into my life and gave me everything I thought I had lost forever. Thank you. Thank you for taking a chance on me, for letting me stay, for loving me." "Thank you for appearing when I needed you most," Emma replied. "Thank you for saying you were here now. Thank you for keeping that promise." They kissed softly, carefully, mindful of the baby sleeping between them. Outside, the wind whispered through the cottonwood tree, and the ranch they had built together settled into the peaceful quiet of night. Emma closed her eyes, feeling more content than she ever had in her entire life. This was everything she had dreamed of and more. This was home. The years that followed were full and rich, marked by both challenges and triumphs. Raising a baby while running a ranch was exhausting work, but Emma and Cole managed it together, just as they managed everything. James grew into a bright, energetic toddler who loved following his father around, mimicking everything Cole did. Cole was a wonderful father, patient and playful, teaching James about horses and cattle and the land with the same gentle competence he brought to everything. In 1885, Emma gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Sarah, after Cole's mother. Sarah was easier than James had been, a calm baby who rarely fussed and seemed content to observe the world around her with wide, curious eyes. James, now 2 years old, was fascinated by his baby sister, always wanting to hold her and help take care of her. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. With the extra hands they had hired and the improvements they had made, the Crawford Ranch became one of the most successful in the area. They expanded their herd to over 100 head of cattle, improved their horse breeding program, and even added chickens and pigs to diversify their income. The house itself was expanded, with Cole adding 2 bedrooms and a larger kitchen to accommodate their growing family. Emma found that motherhood suited her in ways she had not expected. She had always been practical and hardworking, but now she discovered a capacity for tenderness and joy that had been buried under years of grief and struggle. Watching Cole with their children filled her heart to overflowing. He was gentle and loving with them, but also firm when needed, teaching them right from wrong, responsibility and kindness. One evening in the summer of 1887, Emma and Cole sat on the porch after putting the children to bed. James was now 4 and Sarah was 2, and both were finally asleep after a long day of play and mischief. Emma leaned against Cole's side, his arm around her shoulders, and they watched the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "You ever think about how different things could have been?" Emma asked softly. "If you had not come to my door that day, if I had turned you away." Cole was quiet for a moment, his thumb rubbing small circles on her shoulder. "I think about it sometimes," he admitted. "And it scares me how close I came to riding past to going somewhere else. I almost did, you know. I was heading toward Lincoln when I heard some men talking in town about the widow rancher struggling alone. Something made me turn around, made me come to you instead. I have never believed much in fate or destiny, but I believe in that. I believe we were meant to find each other." "So do I," Emma said, tilting her head up to look at him. "You saved me, Cole. I was drowning, losing hope, and you threw me a lifeline. You gave me a reason to keep fighting, to keep believing that life could be good again." "We saved each other," Cole corrected gently. "You gave me a purpose, a home, a family. You gave me everything I thought I had lost forever. We healed each other, Emma. That is what love does. It does not erase the pain, but it makes it bearable. It gives us the strength to keep going." Emma felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears. "I love you so much," she whispered. "I love the life we have built together. I love our children and our ranch and the future we are creating. I would not change a single thing." "Neither would I," Cole said, and he kissed her softly, a kiss that still, after all these years, made her heart race. "Not a single thing." As the years continued to pass, Emma and Cole's family continued to grow. In 1889, Emma gave birth to their third child, another boy they named Thomas. Then in 1892, their fourth and final child was born, a daughter they named Catherine. The house was full of noise and laughter, of children running and playing, of life and love and joy. James grew into a responsible young man, already showing signs of the capable rancher he would become. He loved working alongside his father, learning everything Cole could teach him about managing the land and the livestock. Sarah was quieter, more thoughtful, but no less capable. She had a gift with animals and a keen mind for numbers, helping her mother with the ranch accounts and planning. Thomas and Catherine, the younger two, were still children, full of mischief and energy. Thomas was adventurous and bold, always climbing trees and exploring, while Catherine was sweet and sensitive, loving to help her mother in the garden and kitchen. Emma watched her children grow with a heart full of gratitude and love. She thought often of those dark years of loneliness, of how close she had come to giving up entirely. The ranch that had been her burden was now her legacy, something she and Cole would pass on to their children and grandchildren. The loneliness that had nearly destroyed her was now a distant memory, replaced by the chaos and joy of a full house. In the spring of 1895, Emma and Cole celebrated their 12th wedding anniversary. The children, with the help of the ranch hands, had planned a surprise party, complete with Emma's favorite cake and wildflowers picked from the meadow. They ate and laughed and danced under the cottonwood tree by the creek, and Emma felt so blessed she thought her heart might burst. Later that evening, after the children were finally in bed and the ranch had settled into quiet, Emma and Cole took their customary walk down to the creek. The cottonwood tree had grown larger over the years, its branches spreading wide, providing shade and shelter. They stood under it hand in hand, looking out at the land they had built together. "You remember the first time you brought me here?" Emma asked. "The night you proposed?" Cole smiled, that warm, gentle smile she loved so much. "I remember. I was so nervous I thought I might be sick. I had never wanted anything as much as I wanted you to say yes." "I knew I would say yes before you even asked," Emma admitted. "I think I knew I was going to marry you from almost the first day you arrived. You just felt right, like you were supposed to be here, like you were home." "I was home," Cole said. "You were my home, Emma. You are my home. You and the children and this ranch, this life we have built. I have never been happier, never felt more complete. You gave me that. You gave me everything." Emma turned to face him, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. He was older now, lines around his eyes and strands of silver in his dark hair, but to her, he was as handsome as the day he first rode up to her porch. She traced the familiar scar above his eyebrow, the one that had intrigued her all those years ago. "I love you, Cole Crawford," she said. "I will love you for all my days and beyond. Thank you for appearing when I needed you most. Thank you for saying you were here now. Thank you for staying." "Always," Cole replied, echoing the promise he had made so many years ago. "I will always be here, Emma. For as long as you need me, for as long as I draw breath. You are stuck with me now." Emma laughed, and Cole kissed her, deep and sweet and full of promise. Around them, the night sounds of the ranch created a familiar symphony. Cattle lowing in the distance, horses shuffling in the corral, the soft hoot of an owl in the cottonwood tree. It was the sound of home, of life, of love. They stood there together, two people who had found each other in the depths of loneliness and grief, who had healed and grown and built something beautiful. The Wild West was harsh and unforgiving, but it had given them each other, and that was worth everything. As they walked back to the house, arms around each other, Emma looked up at the stars scattered across the vast New Mexico sky. She thought of her father, of William, of Cole's first wife and daughter, all the ghosts that had shaped who they were. She sent up a silent thank you to them and to whatever force had brought Cole to her door that day. She had been losing hope after years of loneliness. But then the cowboy appeared and said, in word and deed and presence, "I am here now." And everything had changed. Everything had become possible. Love, family, happiness, a future bright with promise. All because two wounded souls had been brave enough to reach for each other, to believe in second chances, to choose hope over despair. The years continued to unfold, each one bringing new joys and challenges. James married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring property in 1901, when he was 18, and brought her to live on the Crawford Ranch. Emma loved her daughter-in-law, a spirited young woman named Mary who fit seamlessly into their family. Within a year, James and Mary had given Emma and Cole their first grandchild, a boy they named Cole Jr., in honor of his grandfather. Sarah chose a different path, moving to town to become a teacher. She met and married a kind schoolteacher from back east, and they settled in Roswell, close enough to visit regularly but far enough to have their own life. Emma was proud of Sarah's independence and intelligence, even though she missed having her daughter on the ranch. Thomas, true to his adventurous nature, spent several years working cattle drives and exploring the territory, before finally settling down on a piece of land adjacent to the Crawford Ranch. He married a widow with 2 young children, and he loved those children as his own, giving Emma and Cole 2 more grandchildren to dote on. Catherine, the youngest, was in no hurry to marry. She loved the ranch and loved working alongside her parents, learning everything they could teach her about managing the property and caring for the animals. She was content with her life, and Emma and Cole did not push her. They knew she would find her path when she was ready. In 1905, Emma and Cole celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary. The ranch had grown beyond anything Emma could have imagined in those dark days of loneliness. They now had over 200 head of cattle, a thriving horse breeding operation, and farmland that produced enough crops to sell at market. The ranch employed 5 full-time hands and several seasonal workers, and it was known throughout the territory as one of the most well-run and prosperous operations in the area. But more than the material success, Emma was proud of what they had built as a family. 4 children, all grown and happy, making their own ways in the world. Grandchildren who filled the house with laughter and chaos. A home that was always open, always welcoming, always full of love. Emma was now 49 years old, and Cole was 51. They had lived more than half their lives together, and Emma could barely remember what it had been like before Cole. The loneliness seemed like a bad dream, something that had happened to a different person. She was strong and healthy, still working the ranch alongside Cole, though they had learned to delegate more as they aged. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Cole suddenly took her hand and squeezed it gently. Emma looked at him, noting the serious expression on his face. "What is it?" she asked, concerned. "Nothing bad," Cole assured her quickly. "I was just thinking about how grateful I am for every single day with you. We have been blessed, Emma. More blessed than either of us had any right to expect, and I want to make sure you know that I see that." "I appreciate it. I appreciate you." Emma felt her eyes fill with tears. Even after all these years, Cole could still move her with his words, with the depth of his love and appreciation. "I know," she said softly. "I feel the same way. Every morning I wake up next to you, I think about how lucky I am. How close I came to giving up before you arrived. You saved my life, Cole. In every way a person can be saved." "You saved mine too," Cole replied. "We saved each other, and we built something beautiful together. A family, a legacy, a love that will outlast us both. Our children and grandchildren, they will carry on what we started here. They will remember us and the life we built. That is immortality, Emma. That is how we live forever." Emma leaned against him, resting her head on his shoulder, and they sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon. She thought about his words, about legacy and immortality, about love that outlasted death. He was right. What they had built together, it would endure long after they were gone. Their children would tell their grandchildren about the cowboy who appeared one day and the widow who took a chance on him. About how they healed each other and built an empire from dust and hope. As the years continued to pass, Emma and Cole grew older but no less devoted to each other or to the ranch. They became grandparents many times over, and then great-grandparents. The house that had once felt too big for one lonely woman was now filled to bursting several times a year when the entire extended family gathered for holidays and celebrations. Catherine eventually did marry, at the age of 30, to a veterinarian who came to the ranch to treat one of the horses. Emma and Cole liked him immediately, appreciating his gentle manner and his obvious devotion to their daughter. Catherine and her husband built a house on the ranch property, and they had 3 children who grew up running wild across the same land their grandparents had fought so hard to preserve. In 1915, Emma and Cole celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary. Emma was now 59 and Cole was 61, and they were surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. The party was enormous, with neighbors and friends coming from miles around to celebrate with them. There was music and dancing and more food than could possibly be eaten. And Emma looked around at the crowd and felt her heart overflow with joy. She and Cole danced together under the stars, just as they had on their wedding day, and Emma marveled at how much had changed and how much had stayed the same. They were older now, their steps slower, but the love between them was as strong as ever, maybe even stronger, forged and tested and proven over 3 decades of partnership. "Happy anniversary, my love," Cole whispered in her ear as they swayed to the music. "Happy anniversary," Emma replied. "Here is to 30 more years," Cole chuckled. "I will do my best, but I make no promises. We are not as young as we used to be." "You will always be young to me," Emma said, and she meant it. When she looked at Cole, she still saw the cowboy who had appeared on her porch all those years ago, offering to work for nothing but food and shelter, carrying his own grief and offering his strength. "And you are still the most beautiful woman I have ever seen," Cole replied. "Inside and out. You are my heart, Emma. You always will be." They kissed there in front of everyone, and the crowd cheered and applauded. Their children smiled, their grandchildren giggled, and their great-grandchildren looked on with the innocent confusion of the very young who cannot yet comprehend the depth of such love. The years rolled on, each one bringing its own joys and sorrows. They lost friends to age and illness, faced droughts and hard winters, weathered economic downturns and personal challenges. But through it all, Emma and Cole faced everything together, their love the constant foundation upon which everything else was built. In the spring of 1920, Emma woke one morning to find Cole still sleeping beside her, which was unusual. He was always up before dawn, a lifelong habit he had never broken. She watched him for a moment, noting how peaceful he looked, how the lines of age and hard work had softened in sleep. Then she noticed that he was not breathing. The realization hit her like a physical blow, stealing her own breath, making her heart stop. She reached out with a shaking hand to touch his face, and his skin was cool beneath her fingers. Cole, her beloved Cole, had passed away in his sleep, peacefully and without pain. He was 66 years old, and he had spent 35 of those years loving her. Emma sat there for a long time, holding his hand, memorizing his face, saying goodbye. The grief was enormous, a tidal wave that threatened to drown her, but underneath it was gratitude. Gratitude for the years they had shared, for the life they had built, for the love that had sustained them both. Cole had lived a long, full, happy life. He had been surrounded by family and love until the very end. It was, in many ways, the best death anyone could hope for. The funeral was attended by hundreds of people. Cole had been respected and loved throughout the territory, known for his fairness and kindness, his hard work and integrity. Emma stood at the graveside, supported by her children and grandchildren, and watched as her husband was laid to rest under the cottonwood tree by the creek, the same tree where he had proposed all those years ago. She placed a single wildflower on his coffin before it was lowered into the ground, and she whispered words only she and Cole would understand. "Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying. Thank you for loving me. Wait for me, my darling. I will come to you when it is my time, and we will be together again." The months after Cole's death were the hardest Emma had faced since those dark days of loneliness before he arrived. The grief was heavy and constant, a weight on her chest that never fully lifted. But she was not alone this time. Her children rallied around her, visiting daily, making sure she ate and rested and did not work herself into exhaustion. Her grandchildren brought light and laughter back into her life, reminding her that love continues, that life goes on, that joy still exists even in the midst of sorrow. James took over the day-to-day running of the ranch, though he consulted Emma on every major decision, respecting her experience and wisdom. The ranch continued to thrive, a testament to everything Emma and Cole had built together. Emma stayed active and involved, though she delegated more of the physical work to the younger generation. She found comfort in the familiar rhythms of ranch life, in the land that held so many memories, in the legacy that would outlast them both. Emma lived for 5 more years after Cole's death. They were good years, full of love and family, of watching her grandchildren grow and her great-grandchildren be born. She told stories about Cole to anyone who would listen, making sure that his memory, his kindness, his love, would never be forgotten. She kept his photograph on her bedside table and talked to him every night before she went to sleep, sharing the events of her day, telling him how much she missed him, promising that she would see him again soon. In the autumn of 1925, Emma Owens Crawford passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 69. Her children found her in her bed, looking peaceful and serene, a slight smile on her face as if she was dreaming of something wonderful. On her bedside table, next to Cole's photograph, was a single wildflower, the same type she had placed on his coffin 5 years earlier. Emma was buried next to Cole under the cottonwood tree, their graves side by side, united in death as they had been in life. The funeral was as large as Cole's had been, the church overflowing with family and friends, people whose lives had been touched by Emma's kindness and strength and unwavering love. At the graveside, James Crawford, now 51 years old and a grandfather himself, spoke on behalf of the family. His voice was steady despite the tears on his face, and he told the story of how his parents had found each other in the midst of loss and loneliness, how they had built a life and a family and a legacy that would endure for generations. "My mother was losing hope after years of loneliness," James said, his words carrying across the assembled crowd. "She was barely surviving, working herself to the bone on a ranch that was slowly dying. And then one day, a cowboy appeared at her door. He offered to work for nothing but food and shelter, and my mother, in a moment of desperate hope, said yes. That decision changed everything." James paused, his eyes moving to the 2 graves, now side by side. "My father looked at my mother, this beautiful, broken woman who was fighting so hard to survive, and he said, in word and deed and presence, 'I am here now.' And he was. For 35 years he was there. Through good times and bad, through joy and sorrow, through everything life threw at them. They healed each other. They loved each other. They built something beautiful together." He wiped at his eyes, his voice breaking slightly. "And now they are together again, reunited in whatever comes after this life. I choose to believe that my father met my mother on the other side with open arms and that same promise. I am here now, and they are at peace, their love eternal, their legacy living on in all of us who carry their names and their blood and their lessons." The service concluded and the family slowly dispersed, but James stayed behind for a few moments, standing between his parents' graves. He placed a hand on each headstone, feeling the warmth of the sun-heated stone beneath his palms. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for showing us what love looks like. Thank you for building this family, this ranch, this life. Thank you for being brave enough to reach for each other when you had every reason to stay isolated in your grief. Because you took that chance, because you loved each other, we all exist. Your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, we are all here because you chose hope over despair. That is your legacy. That is how you will live forever." The Crawford Ranch continued to thrive, passed down through generations, each one adding their own chapter to the story that Emma and Cole had begun. The house was expanded and modernized, but the basic structure remained, a testament to the foundation they had built. The cottonwood tree by the creek grew larger and stronger, its branches spreading wide, providing shade for countless family picnics and gatherings. And beneath it, two graves stood side by side, marked with simple headstones that bore the names Emma Owens Crawford and Cole Crawford, beloved wife and husband, mother and father, grandmother and grandfather. But more than the names and dates, each headstone bore a simple inscription that told their story in just a few words. On Emma's stone, she found hope when a cowboy appeared. On Cole's stone, he said, "I am here now," and kept his promise forever. The story of Emma and Cole became family legend, told and retold at gatherings and holidays, embellished and cherished and passed down like a precious heirloom. It was a story of loss and healing, of loneliness conquered by love, of two wounded souls who found each other and built something beautiful from the ruins of their grief. It was a story of the Wild West, harsh and unforgiving, but also capable of producing love so strong it transcended death itself. And on quiet evenings, when the sun set over the New Mexico landscape, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, when the wind whispered through the cottonwood tree, and the ranch settled into peaceful silence, sometimes people swore they could feel it. The presence of that enduring love, Emma and Cole still watching over the land they had loved, the family they had created, the legacy that would never die. Their story was one of hope triumphant, of love conquering loneliness, of the simple but profound truth that sometimes, when we are at our lowest, when we have lost hope and cannot see a way forward, someone appears. Someone who says, in whatever way they can, "I am here now." And if we are brave enough to let them in, if we are willing to risk our broken hearts one more time, everything can change. Life can begin again. Love can bloom in the dust. And two souls can find their way home to each other, building something that will last not just for their lifetimes, but for generations to come. The end.